thought this morning that I had recorded my brief little lecture that I did in class for business finance, but it turns out I don't think I had the microphone on, so everything was blank. So I'll, for the distance students, do a short one now. What we talked about was not so much the assignments or anything. Everybody seems to be rolling along pretty well there, but the projects. Especially concerned about project 2. There's a whole lot of, especially the distance students, that haven't submitted anything, okay, for project 2. And so this is your, match underneath the butt type of thing, trying to light you up a little bit and get you going. One of the questions that came up with a couple of the face-to-face students was, so they got my feedback on their outline, and for many of them I said, you didn't give me enough information so that I know where you're planning to go with this paper. The outline was fine. They kind of did that. They had things in the proper order, and they gave me the bare bones. But I guess I didn't get my point across earlier that, I think in an outline you should be able to start telling me a little bit about the financial part, especially of the business. That's what the majority, at least a large portion of your grade is going to be based on, is your financial analysis, right? And for the most part, what I've seen so far, it didn't have really any information. It just said, well, I see a line, so it'll talk about the income statement, the balance sheet, cash flow. That was it. Well, tell me a little bit about it. What are you going to do? What are you going to talk about? What's important? What's happened? What's going on with the company a little bit. And so, some of them asked if they could resubmit it, and I said, well, not to improve your grade, but you can certainly, and you should, and I hope all of you do. You're following your company and you're looking at things and trying to see what's going on, and you're looking back a few years, and maybe you got some questions, and so between now and when you write that final paper is a good time to ask questions. And if you're getting way behind now, it's going to make that final paper that much more difficult. As we get closer to the deadline, I'll run low of time, for responding to questions at that point in time, and so now's the time to kind of be following it. The current assignment's the intro and conclusion, and there's a little Word doc in there. It's very short, that's available. I can show you here in the content section here. Project 2, so intro and conclusion, Word doc, right? And we can download that, open it up, and it's kind of in an outline form, which is very, very brief, right? And at this point in time, there may be some things in here that you don't know yet. For example, you probably don't know what your final recommendation is going to be, so it's okay just to put something that says, in my final paper I'll make a recommendation, right? Unless you've really studied your company already, you probably don't know what your recommendation is, okay? And your intro and conclusion aren't set in stone, so I just kind of want to know in this case that you're doing the writing correctly and whatnot, formatting it correctly, that you're putting in there that you're going to tell me what you're going to tell me, you're going to tell me, and then you're going to tell me what you told me, or preview or summarize in the intro, and we're going to have a body that you don't worry about now, and then the conclusion is going to summarize what you told me and ultimately make a recommendation. And so I'd like to see those things. I gave a couple of anecdotes today in class that I think are important. You may ask, why in a finance class we're writing a paper, and why is the instructor so bent out of shape about writing it properly? And the first anecdote I gave was probably about the time I started this assignment, maybe the reason I did start it was several years ago for spring break. I took the week off. I left my wife and child at home alone. I went over to Whitefish, stayed over there for a week at my aunt and uncle. They were south for the winter, and so I stayed at their place by myself and went and skied every day. And one of the things I truly enjoyed about skiing by myself like that was that every time I rode up on the lift, I rode with somebody different. And the one time on the quad chair, I was riding up with 3 fellas that were from Texas, and they'd driven 24 hours straight through to come up to Whitefish and ski, and the one owned his own business, and some kind of a supply business for the oil and gas industry. And they asked what I did, and I told them that I taught school here, a couple hundred miles to the east of Whitefish anyhow. And I taught business, and the guy, the owner of the business in Texas, he looked at me and he says, "You want me to tell you what I need from business students that come to work for me?" And I said, "Yeah, feel free." He says, "I need somebody that can write a good proposal." Okay? So obviously they got to have the background on the business side and whatnot, but they have to be able to write well. And that's what he said, that there was a lack of people that were available to do that. The second anecdote just goes right along with that. We just had our advisory board meeting on Friday, and talking to various business people in the area, and people that hire, a decent number of those people hire our students, and that subject came up, and I didn't bring it up, didn't even tell my little story, and the same thing came out of their mouths, that we are graduating folks from college who aren't writing as proficiently as they should, and part of that's our gen eds, and that's, we discussed that at length. I mean, we require one writing class, and then it's difficult. We've talked about changing our major to include business communication so we can get a little more input on that, but then we have to drop another class, and so it creates a dilemma. So from my standpoint, at least in this class, I want to incorporate this writing component. So one, I get the financial background, and then I don't want to de-emphasize that, because you do need to do a good, solid financial analysis. But two, it should be well written. Okay? So those are the two anecdotes that I kind of told this morning about that. Your intro and conclusion, I don't think I've set a due date. I think I told the class today I probably set it up for next Tuesday to be due. We're getting down there. We got a couple weeks left, and this is going to be due like the Sunday after Thanksgiving, thereabouts. So please don't delay any longer. Get going. I said, watch your company. Follow it. Like I've got some on here that I like to click on. I like to follow them a little bit. Geez, it was up, yeah. That doesn't have anything to do with your paper, okay? But I might be able to come down here and find some news, right? That may very well, have something to do with my paper. And so that's the kind of stuff that you should be doing every day. That's kind of cool, and especially if a company makes a big move, up or down. If a company that I'm following makes a big move up or down, while I'm clicking on some of the news, I'm going to go down here and see, geez, is there some reason? Today Microsoft made a pretty big move up, but that's because the entire market made a big move up. So I don't want to get too worried about it or excited about it, either one. But especially when it moves not in alignment with the market, those things are really important, and things that we should really look at then and kind of follow, because they may really be something that we want to write about in our paper. That's what I talked about this morning, and I thought I'd kind of redo it and send it off to you guys. Please just get in your project 2.